There are these wheel throwing cheat sheets between every other wheel. They talk about the basics of centering, opening, and pulling. It is a great idea to review these when you're first starting out on the wheel, pretty much every time you get on there. Okay, so now we're going to throw a bowl, and I'm not going to go through all the explanation with this one because you've already seen the explanation, but I'm going to attach the wheel, the clay to the wheel. I'm going to cone it up and back down. I'll cone it up again. And then back down. Get the extra clay off the bottom. Now this has still got a little wobble to it, so I'm going to cone it one more time, see if I can get that straightened up. If my clay is not centered correctly, I'm going to fight it the whole time, or it's going to fight me the whole time. So this is absolutely the most important step of throwing, is getting that clay centered well. Okay, so I'm now going to open it up. Now the difference between this and a cylinder, so a bowl usually, rather than having a flat bottom, has more of a rounded bottom. So I'd like to start off with the shape of a bowl on the inside. Okay, I can still take my rib and I can go along the bottom. I just change the angle slightly. Okay, so that's opened up. What I'm going to do now is slow the wheel down, and I'm going to begin pulling up the bowl. And I'm just going to be pulling a little bit more into a bowl shape rather than a tall cylinder. So when I'm pulling now, I'm still doing exactly the same thing. Everything's lined up, but I'm just kind of pulling and bringing up like this. Feels pretty good. I think I can do one more pull maybe. All right, I'm gonna get the extra slip out of the inside. Now with the bowl, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off the same way. If I was going to keep it, I'd slide the wire all the way underneath, and then this one should be trimmed up the next day, which we'll talk about that later on. But for now, we're going to cut it in half to see how it looks. So go to the middle, slide the wire up through it, and then there's the profile, what the bowl looks like. So really even through here, a little thick down here, but this is where you would normally trim up anyhow. So not bad. That's throwing a bowl. Okay, so now we want to talk about cleanup for just a couple of minutes, go through a few things with that. The wheel, the bats, the tools, the bowls, everything needed to be cleaned up and put away for the next class or the next person to use. When you leave the wheel, it should be cleaner than when you started. So a couple of quick things. All the clay that scraps, all the clay in the bucket here and on the wheel, and anything stuck to the wheel, that can all go in the gooey clay bucket. And the wheel water, which is this water here, has a lot of slip in it. This will go into the wheel water bucket. Okay, so here is the gooey clay bucket and the wheel water bucket. You notice the gooey clay bucket has a lid, the wheel water bucket doesn't. So that's where you put your wheel water and your gooey clay. Okay, so I had taken my tools over the sink and cleaned those up. I want to clean the wheel up now. Start by just taking a sponge, not the little ones for working on clay, but the big sponges, and wipe the wheel head and the splash pan and this back part of the wheel up. You want to get this all cleaned up. You don't need to take the splash pan off. That's usually done once a week and cleaned up that way, but you want to clean the top couple inches of the splash pan. If there's a lot of water in there, you'll want to sop some of that water out of there, but otherwise don't worry about it. Once that's all cleaned up, you're going to put the pedal back on the wheel. Make sure the wheel is on the off position. If your chair is dirty, wipe your chair down. It should be left clean for the next person. Put your chair away, and that's it for cleaning up the wheel. Okay, so here we are at the sink. You can see the tools have been cleaned up and they're ready to be put away. The sink is cleaned out. Nope, there's clay in the sink, so the sink needs to be cleaned out. So make sure that gets cleaned out. Any scraps of clay go in the gooey clay bucket. Okay, so here we are back at the sink. You can see the sink area is all cleaned up. The sponges have been squeezed out, rinsed, and put there for the next person. The sink is clean and ready for someone else to use. Okay, just a couple more last minute things on the wheel. Make sure you check the floor. If there's any clay from working on the wheel on the floor, that needs to be cleaned up. And like I said, your chair needs to be cleaned up if it's dirty, and then return that to where it goes. And then you're going to bring your wheel practice sheet up to the teacher so they can sign you off. They're going to check your wheel and sign you out on the sign out log as well.